Verse 857. The Samskrita and the Asamskrita are spoken of as devoid of attachment. How is fire imagined by the ignorant for the establishment of the ego? We've got a few verses here that are concerned with dismantling the ego. And they do this through the metaphor of fire. And fire is something that was regarded in ancient Indian thought as already residing in the combustible material, and it just needed to be released. And the previous verse, we looked at this as well. Now the Samskrita and Asamskrita are spoken of as devoid of attachment. So what are these Samskrita and Asamskrita? Well, they're the basic elements, the basic building blocks of existence, of the world and of the individual. In modern terms we can just understand it as atoms, although the sorts of atoms represented by the Samskrita and Asamskrita are quite different to the atoms that we normally think of in modern times. Atoms and molecules. In fact, you can maybe think of the Samskrita as molecules and Asamskrita as atoms, because Samskrita are compounded things and Asamskrita are uncompounded things. So one would be molecules and one would be atoms. And of course this is quite different to what these terms originally referred to, but what they've got in common with atoms and molecules is they're supposed to be the fundamental components of existence. So I think it's fair, in terms of appreciating what this verse is getting at, to think in these terms, to think in these modern terms. Because when you think about it, the scientific understanding presents us with a most extraordinary scenario. It's saying that there are actually only a very few elements in existence. There's 90 odd naturally occurring ones, and each element is determined by the number of protons and neutrons in its nucleus and the number of electrons going round about it. So you could actually see that protons and neutrons and electrons as the Asamskrita, if you like, or something even more fundamental than that. But the point is, science tells us that there are just these 90 odd elements, and we don't even need all of them for a human to exist. Just a fraction of these. I don't know what the number is. Now the thing is, we don't think of them as being alive. We're not told by the scientists that atoms are alive. Atoms and molecules are alive or not. The story that science presents to us is that there was a Big Bang, and simple elements came into existence, followed by more complex elements. And through random forces, all of this came about, including me with my sense of ego, with my inclination to get into arguments I cannot possibly win, including me with all the fantasies that my mind can generate. Now, this is quite extraordinary, isn't it? When you think about this, it's like leaving a variety of Lego bricks in a box and over time expecting them to become sentient. getting together, start walking around or swimming, swinging from trees, and writing poetry eventually. It's probably a rather crass analogy, but it conveys the spirit of what I'm getting at here, is that there's something unsatisfactory about the notion that a bunch of elements, of inert elements, will eventually get together and start producing poetry. Because according to science, that is what's happened. So what this verse is saying is, well, where's the poetry in the elements? Where's the poetry in the atoms? These atoms get together and also start thinking that they're a unique individual, with perhaps even a part of them which has got nothing to do with atoms, a soul, which is not material. So this is the fire imagined by the ignorant for the establishment of their ego. The ego is something which gets attached. It attaches certain notions to itself, certain situations, certain circumstances, certain self-image and all the rest of it. And it feeds all this through attachment. But atoms don't get attached in this sense. However, I think I'm losing the meaning of this verse here. It's not to attack the scientific understanding, which does seem a little bit ridiculous, but the understanding in terms of Samskrita and Asamskrita is a bit more, makes a bit more sense. The thing is, these things are coming and going all the time, like atoms and molecules. So even if they do give rise to a sense of ego, which let's just say they do, then they're moving around all the time. How can a sense of ego be established? And in fact, if you take the scientific approach, there are vast forces at work at both the macrocosmic level and the microcosmic level. And yet we have this illusion of some kind of stability at the level we inhabit. So how can anything permanent, like an individual soul, arise from this ever-shifting chaos? So I think that's the sense of this verse. Let's have a look at 858 as well. Fire comes to exist in this world supported by the strength of mutuality. If it is imagined to be like fire, whence is the rising of a sentient being? That is, of an ego soul. So with fire, we were told a couple of verses ago that the wind, air, makes it burn or allows it to burn, although it doesn't cause something to burn. So this is the mutuality. You have that initial cause which releases the flame and something which allows it to develop. So this question is asking, whence is the rising of a sentient being, an ego soul? This is when we start getting down to the nitty-gritty, because in Buddhism we haven't got an ego soul. What we've got is the skandhas and the chain of conditioned co-production. And I'll say more about that in the next video.